Hi everyone, my name's Stu Jackson and I'm here today to talk to you about the best methods for self-taping. So I always think of self-taping as being a bit like Marmite. Some people absolutely love it, some people detest it. There are very few people who actually fall in between the two. I'll confess, I'm one of those people that love self-taping, mainly for the flexibility it gives. I mean, I can literally do 8, 9, maybe 10 self-tapes in a single day, whereas going to physical auditions would be much more time restrictive. Add to that, you can take as many takes as you like until you feel you've actually nailed the self-tape, which is great, obviously. They're not a be-all and end-all, and I think as a way of reducing the numbers of people you've got in a casting before you actually bring people in to face-to-face audition, I think it's a brilliant, brilliant technique. I do understand why some people don't like them though. There are many, many people, perhaps you're one of them, who absolutely hates hearing the sound of their own voice or seeing themselves in a production on screen. Now, self-taping, it does take a little bit of a take a deep breath and power through it, but eventually if you do it often enough, I absolutely guarantee you will get used to it. Now we're going to look at a number of different aspects of self-taping today. We're going to look at what equipment you need and also what you don't necessarily need. We're going to look at how you would set up your room or your space that you're going to be self-taping in. We're going to look at how to structure your self-tape, what is expected, what is slating. We'll be covering all that sort of information as well. We'll be looking at how to edit your footage ready to send over either to your agent or to the casting director, including things like how to label it correctly. And finally, we'll be looking at the different methods you can use for sending your footage over. Now, I want to say right from the outset in this video, some of the advice I give is subjective. So if you have something that's different to what I say, but is working brilliantly for you, that's fantastic. Please, please, please carry on with what you're doing on that particular thing. No problem. If it works, don't change it. Hopefully though, you're going to gain some tips and some tricks that will help you along the way. But also I would say, if you do have something that works for you that's different to what I'm saying, share it in the comments below. That's absolutely fantastic. Then people will get a choice. Some things may work better for some people. But generally speaking, the advice I'm going to give is overall absolutely ideal for most people. The other thing I want to say though is if you get anything that directly conflicts what I'm saying here from your agent, for example, if your agent says to you, do not slate your self-tape, then follow your agent's advice or the casting director's advice or whatever. The same goes with labeling. The same goes with absolutely anything whatsoever. If they say it needs to be in a particular setting and I've said to you make sure you've got a blank wall behind you, then go with the setting that they recommend. So agent and casting director advice will always trump anything I say. But that said, I've got a lot of years experience of doing this. I've been producing films for quite some time, both on the casting side and also as an actor. So let's give this a go. So here you can see we've got a variety of equipment, all of which are really useful in terms of self-tapes. Not all of it is essential though, but going through what we have, you've got obviously your recording devices. So you've got tablets, and it can either be a normal size tablet, one of the mini tablets, or of course, very trusty phone. Now, those eagle-eyed amongst you might notice these are Apple products. Obviously, it doesn't have to be Apple, it can be whatever it is that you happen to be using yourself, but they're all equally good. I generally do my self-tapes for ease on my Mac Mini tablet, but I was given a normal size iPad by a friend with a cracked screen, but I put a screen protector over the top of it. You can see in certain angles, I don't know if the camera will pick that up, that the screen is broken, but that really doesn't matter as long as the camera itself is not obscured. It's fine, and having a screen protector over the top of it makes it fine. It might not be fun to watch, but it's useful for recording. So then you've got your items for holding your devices. So this is a fairly standard mobile phone holder. You'll see there is a screw on the bottom for attaching to a tripod, and it simply expands to fit your phone inside, and depending on your tripod you can either have it normal or upright. Now this is a very useful holder for the Mac Mini. I believe it comes in for normal iPad sizes as well, and whatever tablet you have. It's simply a rubber case for it, so it helps to protect it, but it's also designed such, for one thing, it's really handy to hold it. Not that you would do that really with self-tapes, but you can stand it up and it stands really stable. Oh, there we go. It's better when the iPad's actually in it. It is actually a bit more stable. Not that you would knock it in. Now that is not perfectly vertical. There is a slight angle to the back there, so you would want to think about that when you're looking at your space as to where you would put these things for your self-tape. But we'll come on to room setup in just a moment. This is a standard tablet holder, so it expands. Now in the case of the Mac Mini, it will actually fit it vertical. Again, you're probably not going to be doing that with self-tapes, but certainly it'll hold it normally. It's same with the standard size iPad. It'll hold it nicely, and there is a screw on the back that locks it into place when it's the right size. The only downside with this, it doesn't really hold a phone properly. I mean, it will if it's vertical, but to be honest, there are better options out there for holding phones. Then we come on to the tripod, which this is a very standard tripod. You can pick these up quite cheaply on places like eBay. So the legs just clip open and they're telescopic legs. This should come to around about 5 foot height, I would say. It's got a tiltable head on it, and this bit just unhooks when I can do it. There we go. So you can clip that out and you can screw in your devices that have screws. So I should have mentioned the tablet one has a screw holder on the back as well. So again, you can screw that in, pop it on the top, and job's a good one. Now the other thing with the tripod, you can have it as small as this. Now I would recommend a smaller tripod, but one that does go up to maybe 4 to 5 feet in height. But a smaller one's quite handy if you are short on space and you do need to put it on a table for some reason. There you go. That's ideal. So you get a bit more flexibility than with some of the bigger tripods, I feel. Also, to be honest, they're cheaper, so that's got to be good. Over other forms of tripods now, we have, these are quite similar styles. The legs pop out. These are tabletop tripods, and they are very standard. You'll notice again they've got the screw on the top so that you can add your phone holder or tablet holder. They do have flexible heads on them, so you'll see that can rotate round. I can even go to a 90-degree angle on this one, but they do rotate round so you can get the right levels. This one has extendable legs, so you can actually bring it up a little bit further if you want to, or it sits a bit lower. There we are. This one a little bit different. It doesn't have extendable legs, but what it does have is these legs that bend like that. So these are quite handy if you are going to hook your tripod over something, say a TV in the middle of the room. You maybe put your legs in front of your screen, hook it over, and then you can stand it and then adjust your head however you want accordingly. So yeah, you get a bit of versatility with these. So you've got normal mobile phone holders. These are just static, and they will hold the phone at an angle. So again, not really a fan of these for recording, but if it's what you have, it's what you have. The angle is a bit steep for me, so you have to be quite a way above the height of the thing looking down on it. And while there are cases where you might want that in a self-tape, and that's really getting into some of the deeper nitty-gritty of different types of shots, generally speaking, you don't want to be looking too far down onto your shot. Aesthetically, it's not that nice. But those exist. This I love this. This is a really handy piece of kit. I keep it in my wallet at all times, so that I have a phone holder with me at all times. Just to give you a comparison as to the size of a credit card, it is just under the size of a credit card on my Oyster card there. You can see slightly under the size. And what we do with this is we can twist it. As a kid, I always loved Transformers as toys, so I think it's appealing to that in me, and that just sits in there. It will actually rotate and flex up and down, so you can get the perfect angle sitting on your desktop, or put it on a bookshelf so that it sits nicely at the right angle. So there we have that. I've never tried it with a tablet before. Let's give that a quick... no, bit heavy, bit unstable. Not too bad actually. Yeah. But the thing with this is it's ideal for when you're out and about and away from home. So there are better things for tablets. The last item is very similar to, it's like a combination of the mobile phone holder and the tablet holder. This one is a variable one. Again, it's got the screw hole underneath for tripod use, but this slides up and down, so you can have absolutely massive, and that slides up with a click, so you can have massive devices right the way through. Let me show you. Right the way through it down. It'll hold a mobile phone as well. Horrible noise to it, these clicky clacky things, but there we go. So that's got the versatility for both tablet and phone, which can be really useful. There we are. That's the basic equipment that you're going to need. Well, actually you don't need all of this. This is really to show you that you've got some varieties you can use. Like I said, if you've got a phone, and to be honest, you don't even need any of this. If you've got a bookshelf or something like that, and you've got a pile of books, and you can find a way of just propping your phone up, you know, maybe use something to hold it in place. But if you can do that, okay, I can't do it here, but you get the idea. If you can do that, then that is good enough. As long as the phone's not moving, as long as it's stable, as long as it's not going to drop. Obviously be careful not to drop these things, they are expensive, as you no doubt know. But yeah, these are really handy things to have. But absolute basics for me would be a tripod and a phone holder, and that's enough. Now, it's worth making a couple of points about equipment that I feel you don't actually need, that a lot of places say you do. First of all, professional lighting setups. Now, as a filmmaker, I have these things. I've got great big tripods with LED lights that'll floodlight a whole scene if needs be, right the way through to smaller lights that can really fix on things. But here's the thing, for self-tapes, I don't bother. There is really not that much need for them. As long as, and this is absolutely clear, as long as the casting director can see you clearly and can make you out, there is absolutely no need for specialist lighting. As a personal preference, I like to use natural lighting where I possibly can, because I think that gives the most accurate view of what we look like. Now, we'll come into the editing side of it a little bit later, but if you find that your scene is a little bit dark or a little bit bright, there can be things that you can do to adjust that. But essentially, if you're looking at it on your device and you look fine, you're visible, that's enough. You don't want to be in shadow, but nor do you want to be overly lit. Now, I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. So here is me overly lit, and here is me in too much shadow. Okay, so as I am now is fine. I'm actually shooting this straight off my phone. There is no special lighting. I don't have the indoors lighting on. There is literally just the natural lighting coming from behind me and bouncing around the room. That's, to be honest, that's enough. Now the other thing that, again, I don't feel that people actually need is specialist sound equipment. Now, for the purposes of this tutorial, I am actually using a sound recording device. I've got a Zoom H1 hooked up to a lav mic on my sweater, but that is for a tutorial basis. Ordinarily, again, for self-tapes, I just don't bother with them because the microphone on your device is good enough for self-tape. Bear in mind what a self-tape is for. It is so that the casting director can see you in that particular role. That's it. They're not looking for your videography skills, they're not looking for your sound skills, they're not looking for your editing skills. They're looking to see well, they should already know if you can act from your show reel, which they will have looked at. They'll have an idea of how you look from your headshot. Now they will just want to see the two things together. They want to see you saying a few of the lines, emoting a little bit. Do you bring anything unusual to that role? Do you not? Again, we'll come into technique in a little while in this tutorial, but just remember this when you're setting it up. It's not about being the next Steven Spielberg. It is literally just about capturing your image. So, coming on to that, we're now going to look at the room that you've got to work with. Now you're going to want your phone to be, or your device to be far enough away that you can capture yourself head to toe for slating in advance. Although generally speaking, for most of your self-tape, you'll be shooting from your sort of middle upwards, what we call the mid shot. But you will want it far enough away, like I say, so that you can shoot head to toe, so that the casting director can see what you look like in full. You also want to be against a plain background wherever you possibly can. Now there is a temptation and I would always say use what you've got. So we're looking around here, there aren't really any empty spaces, so what I could theoretically do maybe is draw the curtain, but that's not a plain background, and also it's blocked out quite a lot of the natural light. As I say, I do actually prefer natural light in a scene, but I know this because I've done it many times in the past. I know that this chest of drawers will move quite easily out of the way, so I'm going to do that off camera. I would say be careful about moving pieces of equipment, pieces of furniture around if you're going to be doing this for self-taping. You want something that's going to be easy to do. You want to be very careful you don't hurt yourself. Now I only know I can move this from a lot of personal experience. I do this on a very, very regular basis, but do please be careful when you're doing that. Okay, so we'll catch up in just a moment. And there we have it, just like magic. It wasn't magic, it was me using my muscles, but there we go. You don't want to see that on screen, believe me. But now we've got a nice plain white, or just off-white, plain is the key word, background for me to shoot against. Now I'm going to go behind camera just a second, and I'm going to pan round so you get to see the full idea of the setup and what I've done here. So you've got a little bit jerky, sorry about that. So yes, so you can see you've got the plain wall there, lots of natural light. You can see where I've moved the cupboard to, and over here you can see just next to a mirror. A mirror is really handy for seeing how you look in full. You've got the tripod and the iPad on top ready to go. Now there is probably, I would say, about 5 foot distance between the wall and the tripod, which is going to certainly be adequate for these purposes. So there we are. So there you have it. So from here now we'll start to look at how you actually put a self-tape together. Now, before we have a look at the best way to structure a self-tape, let's have a quick look at an example of what not to do. Yeah, so here's my self-tape. I'll be brilliant in your thing. So all the world's a stage, and all the men and women are merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his act being of 7 ages. Wow, I'm sure you'll agree that was absolutely terrible. It was almost impossible to watch with the background spinning round. That was incredibly distracting. Obviously there were things in the background which really didn't help. There wasn't a standard distance between the camera and the focus. Who was it who was making that self-tape? Do we know their name? Do we know what it is they're actually going for? What character? There's an awful lot that was actually wrong with it. Surprisingly, looking back at it, there were 1 or 2 things that actually did work quite well. One was that obviously I was in frame at all times, which I've seen exceptions where they weren't, and it was surprisingly well lit. I actually tried to shoot it so it was a little bit on the dark side, but it wasn't as badly lit as all that. But overall, I'm sure you'll agree that was an appalling example. Now, if you think that I've created something that is far more extreme than anything out there, I'm sad to say that's not the case. I've received myself self-tapes when I've been casting for productions that was actually based on. I've seen that and worse. So yeah, that really is an example of what not to do. So let's have a look at an example of a good self-tape, and then we'll go into how that was actually made. Hi, my name's Stu Jackson from DBoss Talent Management, And here is my self-tape audition for the role of Jake Wheeze in As You Like It. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being of 7 ages. So there you go, nice and simple, but let's break it down piece by piece and have a look at what it was that I actually did. So I started out here by slating the piece. Now what do we mean by slating? I said my name, my agent. Obviously if you don't have an agent you would just leave that bit out. But I said my name, I said what role I was casting for, and I said the name of the production. And now this can be quite important because if this goes to a casting director, they may have multiple productions that they're casting for. So it makes it easy for them to say, alright, it's for this specific thing. So you'll notice that in this particular example I am actually filming in portrait, so that means it's longer rather than wider, but that was so that I could get my entire body head to toe in the shot. Now after slating it, I then went on to produce profiles and to show my hands front and back. Now it amazes me that many people attend obviously very professional auditions and they'll go along to auditions and they have to do this exact procedure. When it comes to self-tapes, they don't. And I never quite know why. It doesn't hurt to do this unless, as I said right at the beginning, unless you get conflicting information that says don't slate. I would recommend doing this. It's not going to hurt. Then you'll see the shot changes into what we call the mid shot. So this is from around chest height, bottom of the chest, up above. And you'll notice there's lots of gesticulation with my hands, but I remain planted where I am. So the last thing you want to be doing is moving about, dodging about side to side. Watch out for that. It's very easy to do, especially when you're nervous, sort of moving from one foot to another. If you plant your feet firmly and use your hands to gesticulate, it'll feel a little bit odd and a little bit awkward at first, and it's actually a very good presentation technique to get used to, but as you practice it and as you do it, it will become more and more familiar to you. So there we are. I ran through the piece. I kept my eyes on the camera at all times. Now it's a bit of a tricky one if you've got dual dialogue with someone. Now this is an example of a monologue obviously, but if you've got a duologue with someone else, what you would do in that case, if you've got somebody reading with you, absolutely fantastic. Make sure they are behind the camera, maybe not directly behind the camera, maybe just offset, so you're looking at them in this sort of direction, so the camera can still see your face nice and clear, but you're not looking directly at the camera. But make sure that they are quieter than you are when it comes to the edit. This is quite important. We want to hear you. We don't want to be distracted by other things. Again, I've seen self-tapes for duologues where people have had the person reading him stood at the side of them, and that can be very distracting. It's you that's auditioning, not the other person. If for any reason you are unable to get anyone to read with you and it's a duologue, little thing that I've done in the past is I will go through and say the lines of the character that I'm wanting to portray and leave appropriate gaps for the other person speaking, and then separately I will record voice snippets of me saying the other lines, which I will then insert in the editing stage at a quieter volume so that we know who's speaking. It's not the ideal situation, but I've done that many times myself when I've been short of someone else to read in for me. Hopefully that'll give you some ideas. But again, as I said earlier, Don't be afraid to go over and over and over and re-record till you feel happy with what you've got. Now we're going to put together your beautifully shot self-tape and edit it together into something presentable for your agent or casting director. I'm going to be doing this on an iMac and we'll be using iMovies as my editing software. Obviously you can do this on Windows using Windows Movie Maker. You can even do this on a mobile phone using something like Cyberlink's Power Director, which I believe is free. There are lots of options out there for you, and there are also plenty of tutorials in how to actually do these things. Now this is not an editing tutorial, this is a self-tape tutorial, so I will be skipping over sort of the how-tos about all this, but like I said, there are lots and lots of tutorials out there that teach you how to edit. But it's the structure we're looking for here. So I've already loaded up my two pieces of software. They're my two clips. We have my slate and my main piece. So the first thing I'm going to do is to drag into my timeline my slate. Now you'll see here, if I play this, there we go, you can see it's right from when I started recording all the way through. Now we're not going to want that, so what I will do is I will take it to a point just before I start speaking. I can also look here, if I expand the audio up, there we go, you can see the peak here of where I start speaking. So if I go just before that and just drag it so that I look natural, there we are, that's exactly where I want to be. So split the clip there, delete the bit I don't want, and back to the beginning. That's where it starts. That's good. Okay, so, and where do I end? So I do my profiles, profile, hands, and then of course you see me walking back towards the camera to switch it off, which we don't want again. So I'll bring that back to where I've shown my hands, back to a natural position, and I will cut there. Now this is quite a rough and ready method of doing this, which to be honest is all you need. Now you will notice as well, volume wise, I pumped that up to 100% from wherever it was, 400% in fact. The reason for that is that I want that to be reasonably loud. Because my device was, when you record with your phone or your tablet, it's going to be across the other side of the room. You certainly don't want to shout or project at your device, so you will speak more softly than normal. So just bringing that volume up to the maximum there isn't going to hurt. You will lose a little bit of audio quality, but as I said before, it's not about proving that you're an amazing sound person or lighting person or anything like that. So I'll come to the main part of the clip, and just drag it in, so straight after, exactly the same thing. It's from when I pressed go. If I bump up the volume again, you can see, oh, I made a little bit of noise there, you can just see, but where am I actually starting? There's where I'm starting speaking, that peak there. So if I just bring it again to a natural, that looks like a good place to me. So I want to split that, delete the bit that I don't want. So there we go. Now ordinarily in video editing, you would look at continuity. Now you see my hands are at the side there and they're not there. If it was a quick cut like that, in a film that would look terrible, but for the purposes of a self-tape, we're not worried about continuity or anything like that. And indeed, when it comes to transitions, we'll talk about that in just a moment, but we'll make it absolutely clear that it's not supposed to be continuous. But there we go, so there's me delivering my monologue, and I pause. Okay. Now, because of the way in which we're going to transition our shots, I'm actually going to go a little bit after where I finish speaking. That should be nice. Delete the bit we don't want, and there we go. So for transitions, what I like to do is a fade to colour between every single shot. So put one between, you'll see that's popped in there, and when that plays you'll see it'll fade to black and then fade. That's a bit quick the way I'm doing it there, but we'll play that in just a moment. But I also like to do the same at the beginning and at the end. So if we go right back to the very beginning of this, here we go, and play that. Hi, my name's Stu Jack. Now before we go any further, straight away I noticed actually I'd probably cut that a little bit early. There were bits I didn't want there, so let's just bring that there. We want that. I'll split that clip again, remove the bit we don't want, and I'll try again.
Hi, my name's Stu Jack.
Beautiful.
From D-Boss Talent Management.
So that comes straight into it on a nice fade. Fades a nice way of transitioning.
In As You Like It.
And you'll see my profiles, on. And then we go to transition to, yep, that's
all the world's a stage.
Yep, you see that nice and straight into it, there's no waiting. Let's just have a look at the end. Just do that a little bit nearer, further from the end.
Alex, being of 7 ages.
Nice. So that's all you need to do. Oh, that's all you need to do on that. It keeps it nice and simple and straightforward. I have known some people to put titles at the beginning, but to be honest, you're saying your name, you're saying your agent, you're saying what role you're going for. You don't actually need any titles. And let's face it, casting directors and agents, their time is obviously very precious. They might have hundreds, possibly even thousands of these to look through in some cases. So anything that keeps it sort of briefer and to the point, the better. So there we are. That's the editing side. Now we're going to take our nicely edited footage and we're going to save it. So I'm going to save this to file, and here is where our labeling comes into effect. So what I always do is I will put my name in capitals, self-tape in lowercase, the name of the character in capitals, and then the name of the production with capitals at the beginning of each word, but mostly in lowercase. Now what this does, this makes it clear who I am, what I'm doing, what character is it for, and what production, so it's nice and clear. But also there's a little bit of psychology behind this, having my name and the character's name in capitals. Stu Jackson as Jaques really jumps out at you. Okay, so again, just, it might be silly, but I like to do that. Now in terms of format, there are various formats you can go for. I like 720p as a standard when filming self-tapes. I think it's certainly it's good enough quality for most self-tapes, but it doesn't take up too much resolution. Quality, when you've got it, you want to stick with high or medium. I tend to go high if it's a short self-tape, and then got to pick somewhere to save it. So in my case, I'm just going to save it to my desktop. I've got a folder called self-tapes, and there we go, saving that to my self-tapes folder. And there we go. That is the editing side. Okay, so now you've got your edited footage. How do you transfer it to your agent or the casting director? Now, in many cases, they will tell you how they want it transferred. Some might choose Dropbox, which is an excellent service for you to save files so that other people can access them. Google Docs is another one similar, and the iCloud, and there are many different ways of doing it. My personal preference, if given the option, is this website here, WeTransfer. Now, you'll notice I've saved this file as an MP4. You might just see there, which is a fantastic file system for giving you good quality, but it's compressed, so it's a smaller file. And in fact, if I have a look at what size file this is, there we go, 46 megabytes. So really not that big at all, and certainly small enough to work with. If you find you are using a bigger file because it's a much longer self-tape, there are compression services out there that can help. You can send it as a zip file, for example. There are even services that will just simply save you a reduced size version, but in this case this is going to be absolutely fine. So WeTransfer allows you to send files in two different ways. One is that you can input the email of the person you're sending to and your own email address along with any message as well, and then it will basically email a link to that particular person with your files. But in this case I'm actually going to use a different system, which is get transfer link. So what it's going to do in this case is actually give me a link that I can then send to anybody, which is really handy if I'm going to be sending to multiple people. You still have the opportunity to write a message, so I'm going to write, hi, this is my self-tape for the role of Jaques. Kind regards, Stu. So that's a slightly less fun one that maybe I would send to an agent. If I'm sending this direct to a casting director, I would probably go into a bit more detail, give them a link to my spotlight page in there, and be a bit more formal. But that's a whole different, emailing casting directors is a whole different subject and quite lengthy. So very simply, I can either click on here and this will add a file through the library system, or I can just literally drag it anywhere on the screen and you'll see it's added there. It says 2 gig remaining. The free version of WeTransfer allows you to transfer up to 2 gigabytes in total, but there we go. It's really quite as simple as that, and you'll see it transfers fairly quickly. Now this is going to vary depending on the speed of your computer, depending on the speed of your connection, because it is now speaking to the internet. It's essentially uploading your file to their server, where it can be recalled from. So we'll fast forward for the rest of this. And there you have it. It's as simple as that. So in here is the specific link. Just clicking on it copies it to your clipboard. I'm Mr. Paranoid, so I like to copy it as well. But it really is as simple as that. So anybody you send that link to, I believe it's within 7 days, can download your self-tape. So there you have it. That is the basics on how to produce a self-tape audition. We've covered what equipment you need, how to set up your room properly, how to structure your self-tape, how to edit it effectively, and how to send it on to your agent or the casting director. I really hope that this has been of good use to you. But listen, this is not the be-all and end-all. We've only really just scratched the surface of self-tapes here. If you've got good practices, or if you've got any questions about self-tapes, then do post in the comments below. I'd love to hear them, I'd love to respond. And certainly, yeah, especially if you've got good practice and tips yourself, yeah, get it down there so that people can see. That would be fantastic. One final note on self-tapes before we do go though, be very careful not to share your self-tapes on social media and publicly. Quite often audition self-tapes are confidential information and you might be in breach of something by doing so. But listen, if it's a self-tape that you've recorded yourself with public domain information just for feedback or just to practice, then great, fantastic. Share away. In fact, share your links below. I would love to see them. And likewise, if you've got any questions about the acting industry in general and you'd like to see more tutorials like this, then tell me what you want to see tutorials about and I will do my best to get it out there for you. Listen, I'm Stu Jackson. Thanks for watching. It's been great talking to you. Take care.